My 7-year-old daughter sat on my parents' living room floor on Christmas morning, surrounded by her cousins, who were all waving $5,000 checks in the air. She opened her envelope slowly, carefully, the way she does everything. And inside was a single dollar bill and a handwritten note that said, "Maybe next year you'll deserve more." She looked up at me with tears pooling in her big brown eyes, her little chin trembling, and she asked me a question that shattered something inside my chest. "Mommy, what did I do wrong?" I couldn't answer her. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred and my hands started shaking, but not from sadness, from rage. Pure, white-hot rage that I had been suppressing for 7 years. But I knew exactly what I was going to do next. I pulled out my phone and made one call, just one. And by New Year's Eve, my parents were standing on my doorstep in the freezing cold, begging me to forgive them. My name is Corinne, and this is the story of how I finally stopped letting my family treat my daughter like she was invisible. Let me introduce you to the people in this story, because you need to understand who they are to understand why what happened was so devastating. My daughter Willa is 7 years old. She has curly hair that never stays in a ponytail and a smile that lights up every room she walks into. She loves drawing pictures of our cat. She sleeps with a stuffed elephant named Buttons, and she thinks the best days are the ones where we make pancakes together on Saturday mornings. She is kind, she is gentle, and she has never done a single thing to deserve what my parents did to her. Willa's biological father, my first husband, died in a car accident when she was only 2 years old. She doesn't remember him, but she knows about him. She knows he loved her. And she knows that my current husband, Denton, adopted her and chose to be her daddy because he loves her too. Denton is a firefighter. He's been my husband for 3 years, and he treats Willa like she's his own flesh and blood because to him, she is. He never makes her feel like a stepchild. He never makes her feel like less than. He's been watching my parents treat Willa differently for years, and every time we leave their house, I can see the anger simmering behind his eyes. But he's held his tongue out of respect for me, because I kept telling him that things would get better, that my parents would come around. I was wrong. My mother's name is Harriet. She's 63 years old, retired from a long career as a school administrator, and she has always cared more about appearances than anything else. The right clothes, the right neighborhood, the right grandchildren. She's been cold toward Willa since the day my daughter was born, but I kept making excuses for her. I kept telling myself that she just needed time to warm up, that she was grieving my first husband too, that she would eventually see Willa for the wonderful child she is. My father is Leonard. He's 66, retired from insurance sales, and he owns 6 rental properties that fund his comfortable retirement. He's not as openly cruel as my mother, but he enables everything she does. He looks the other way. He stays silent when he should speak up. And his silence has always hurt, just as much as her words. Then there's my sister Margot, the oldest at 38. She has 3 children who can do no wrong in my mother's eyes. She knows about the favoritism. She sees it. But she's never once spoken against it because she's the one benefiting from it. Her kids get the best gifts, the most attention, the biggest smiles. Why would she risk that? And finally, my younger brother, Nolan. He's 31 with 2 kids of his own. He lives closest to my parents and enjoys their financial generosity without question. He stays out of family conflicts because staying quiet keeps the money flowing in his direction. These are the people who sat in that living room on Christmas morning and watched my daughter open an envelope containing a single dollar bill and a note telling her she didn't deserve more. These are the people who said nothing, who did nothing, who let a 7-year-old girl believe she was somehow broken. But here's what none of them knew. Here's what none of them counted on. For 8 years, I had been the one managing my parents' rental properties. I handled the tenants, the repairs, the taxes, the insurance, the finances. I did all of it without asking for a single dollar in return, because I thought that's what good daughters do. I thought if I just helped enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, they would finally accept my daughter. They never did. And on that Christmas morning, I finally stopped waiting for them to change. What happened over the next 6 days brought my parents to their knees, and it all started with one phone call. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. To understand why that Christmas morning broke me, you need to understand what my life looked like before I walked into my parents' house that day. I work as a bookkeeper at a small accounting firm in town. It's steady work, good hours, and it lets me be home when Willa gets off the school bus every afternoon. Denton works 24-hour shifts at the fire station, so our schedules overlap just enough that one of us is almost always home with her. We're not wealthy, but we're comfortable. We have a nice house in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard big enough for Willa to run around with our cat. Life is good. But for the past 8 years, I've been living a double life that nobody outside my family knows about. When my father retired, he had 6 rental properties that he'd accumulated over his career. Duplexes and small single-family homes scattered around the county. He bought them as investments, thinking they'd fund his retirement. And they do. Those properties bring in close to $12,000 a month in rental income. But my father has never managed a single one of them. I have. Since I was 26 years old, I've been the one handling everything. When a tenant's refrigerator breaks at midnight, they call me. When the roof starts leaking, I'm the one finding contractors and getting quotes. I collect the rent, I pay the property taxes, I file the insurance paperwork, I coordinate inspections, and I keep the books balanced down to the penny. My father doesn't even know the names of his own tenants. My mother has never once looked at a lease agreement. And I've done all of this for free, not a single dollar, not once. I told myself it was because I was helping my family. I told myself it was because my parents were getting older and they needed me. But the truth, the real truth that I couldn't admit to myself for years, was that I was trying to earn something that should have been given freely. I was trying to earn their love, their approval, their acceptance of my daughter. When Willa was born, I thought my parents would be overjoyed, their first grandchild. But from the moment they held her in the hospital, something was off. My mother kept making comments about how Willa didn't look like anyone in our family. My father seemed distracted, distant, like he was holding a stranger's baby instead of his own granddaughter. Then my first husband died, and everything got worse. I was 27 years old with a 2-year-old daughter and a shattered heart. I thought my parents would step up. I thought they would help me through the darkest period of my life. Instead, my mother pulled me aside at the funeral and said something I will never forget. Maybe this is a chance for you to start fresh, Corinne. Find someone from a good family this time, someone whose children will actually belong. I should have cut her off right then. I should have walked away and never looked back. But I was grieving and broken, and I needed my mother, so I swallowed those words and pretended she never said them. 3 years ago, I married Denton. He's everything my first husband was and more. Strong, kind, devoted. When he proposed, he didn't just propose to me. He got down on one knee in front of Willa, too, and asked if he could be her daddy. She said yes before I could even answer. 6 months after our wedding, he officially adopted her. She took his last name. She calls him Dad. He's the only father she's ever really known. But to my parents, none of that matters. To them, Willa will always be the child from my first mistake, the granddaughter who doesn't share their blood, the little girl who doesn't quite belong. The night before Christmas, I was packing Willa's overnight bag when Denton came into the bedroom. He leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, and I knew from his expression that he had something to say. "Are you sure about this, Corinne? Every year we go over there, and every year Willa ends up feeling like she doesn't belong." I zipped the bag and forced a smile. "My mom said she has something special planned for all the grandchildren this year. She specifically said all of them. I think they're finally coming around, Denton. I really do." He was quiet for a moment. Then he walked over and put his hands on my shoulders. "I hope you're right. For Willa's sake. But if anything happens tomorrow, if they do anything to make her feel less than, I'm not staying quiet this time." I kissed his cheek and told him everything would be fine. I believed it. I really believed that this Christmas would be the turning point, that my parents had finally seen what everyone else saw when they looked at my daughter, a bright, beautiful, loving child who deserved the world. I was so desperate to believe it that I ignored every warning sign. I ignored the way my mother never called Willa by her name on the phone, always referring to her as the girl or your daughter. I ignored the fact that my parents had never once babysat Willa, even though they watched Margot and Nolan's kids all the time. I ignored the smaller gifts, the forgotten birthdays, the way Willa always seemed invisible at family gatherings. I made excuses for all of it because I wanted so badly to have the family I thought I deserved, the family Willa deserved. But on Christmas morning, my parents made it impossible to ignore anymore. And looking back, maybe that was the gift I actually needed. We arrived at my parents' house around noon on Christmas Day. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds, and a thin layer of frost covered the lawn. Their colonial home looked like something out of a holiday catalog. Wreaths on every window, garland wrapped around the porch railings, a giant inflatable snowman waving from the front yard. Willa bounced in her seat as Denton pulled into the driveway. "Look at Grandma's house, Mommy. It's so pretty." I smiled at her excitement even as my stomach tightened with familiar anxiety. "It is pretty, sweetheart. Are you ready to see your cousins?" She nodded so hard her curls bounced. "I made them all cards. Do you think they'll like them?" "They're going to love them," Denton said, catching my eye in the rear-view mirror. His expression said what his words didn't. "Stay alert. I'm watching." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey. Margot was already in the living room with her 3 children, who were tearing through a pile of presents under the enormous tree. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a red velvet dress and a satisfied smile, playing the role of the perfect hostess. "Corinne, you're late," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. Her eyes moved past me to Willa, and for a split second her smile flickered. "Hello, Willa." Not "hello, sweetheart," or "hello, my darling," the way she greeted Margot's kids. Just "hello, Willa." Flat and distant. Willa didn't seem to notice. She ran toward her cousins, clutching her handmade cards, eager to be included. I watched as Margot's oldest daughter glanced at Willa and then turned back to her new toys without a word. My heart sank, but I told myself it was fine. Kids get distracted on Christmas. It didn't mean anything. Nolan arrived an hour later with his wife and their 2 children. The house was full now, loud with laughter and the sound of wrapping paper being torn. My father sat in his leather armchair by the fireplace, nursing a glass of scotch and watching the chaos with a thin smile. After dinner, my mother stood and clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. The room went quiet. The children stopped playing and looked up with eager faces. "Your grandfather and I have a very special announcement," she said, her voice dripping with theatrical warmth. "This year, we've decided to give each of our grandchildren a Christmas gift that will help set them up for their futures." She reached behind the couch and pulled out a stack of white envelopes. My heart started beating faster. Something special for all the grandchildren. That's what she had promised. Margot's 3 kids went first. One by one, they opened their envelopes and pulled out checks. $5,000 each. They screamed with excitement. Margot beamed like she had won a prize. My mother basked in the attention, soaking up the gratitude like sunlight. Nolan's 2 kids went next. Same thing. $5,000 each. More screaming, more hugging. My father raised his glass in a toast to his own generosity. Then my mother turned to Willa. My daughter had been sitting quietly on the floor, watching her cousins with wide eyes. When my mother approached her, Willa's face lit up with hope. She'd been waiting so patiently, so politely. My sweet girl who always followed the rules and never complained. My mother dropped the envelope into Willa's lap without bending down, without a smile, without a single word of warmth. Willa opened it carefully, her small fingers trembling with anticipation. She pulled out a single dollar bill, her eyebrows scrunched together in confusion. Then she unfolded the note that came with it and read the words slowly, sounding them out the way she did with her chapter books. "Maybe next year you'll deserve more." The room went silent. Not a peaceful silence, a suffocating one. The kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your pulse pound in your head. Willa looked up at me. Her eyes were filling with tears, her lower lip quivering. "Mommy, what did I do wrong? Was I bad?" I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My entire body felt frozen in place as I stared at my daughter's crumbling face. I turned to my mother. "What is this, Mom? What the hell is this?" She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She lifted her chin and looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "We give generously to our grandchildren, Corinne. Willa isn't really ours, is she? She's from your first mistake. Honestly, we've tolerated her presence for years. Be grateful she got anything at all. The words hit me like a physical blow. I heard Denton inhale sharply behind me. I felt his hand grip my elbow, steadying me. My father cleared his throat. Your mother's right. Blood is blood. You can't expect us to treat her the same as the others. It wouldn't be fair to them. I looked at Margot. She was staring at her feet, her cheeks flushed, refusing to meet my eyes. I looked at Nolan. He was scrolling through his phone like nothing was happening. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended my daughter. Nobody told my parents they were wrong. Willa started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Quiet, confused, heartbroken tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched that $1 bill in her tiny fist. Denton stepped forward, his voice low and hard. We're leaving. Right now. He scooped Willa into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder, her little body shaking. He looked at my parents with an expression I had never seen before. Pure, controlled fury. You should be ashamed of yourselves, he said. Both of you. My mother rolled her eyes. Actually, rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic, Denton. This is a family matter. I grabbed Willa's coat from the rack. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I turned back to look at my parents one last time. My mother stood with her arms crossed, defiant. My father wouldn't meet my gaze. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. I walked out the door with my husband and my sobbing daughter, and I didn't look back. But as I stepped into the cold December air, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been dormant for years finally woke up. They thought I would forgive them. They thought I would come crawling back the way I always did. They had no idea what was coming. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Willa cried quietly in the back seat, hiccuping between sobs. Denton gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. I sat in the passenger seat staring straight ahead, my mind racing with every memory I had tried to bury for 7 years. Every backhanded comment, every forgotten birthday. Every time my mother looked at Willa like she was an inconvenience rather than a grandchild. I had excused it all. I had told myself it would get better. I had sacrificed my dignity and my daughter's happiness on the altar of family loyalty. And for what? A $1 bill and a note telling my child she wasn't good enough. Halfway home, Willa's small voice broke through the silence. Mommy, is it because my first daddy went to heaven? Is that why Grandma doesn't love me? I felt something crack open in my chest. I turned around in my seat and looked at my daughter's tear-streaked face, her red-rimmed eyes, her trembling chin. She was 7 years old. She should be worried about losing teeth and learning to ride a bike without training wheels, not questioning whether she deserved to be loved. Denton, pull over, I said. He found a spot on the side of the road and stopped the car. I unbuckled my seatbelt and climbed into the back seat next to Willa. I took her face in my hands and looked directly into her eyes. Listen to me, baby. You did nothing wrong, nothing. You are perfect exactly the way you are. You are kind and smart and wonderful, and anyone who doesn't see that is the one with the problem. Not you. Never you. Willa sniffled. Then why did Grandma write that note? Why didn't I get the same as everybody else? I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. Because Grandma made a terrible choice, a mean, unfair choice. And it has nothing to do with who you are. It's about who she is. Do you understand? She nodded against my shoulder, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. How could she? She was 7. She had just been humiliated in front of her entire family on Christmas morning. Words weren't going to fix this. Action would. I kissed the top of her head. I promise you, sweetheart, Mommy is going to make this right. That night, after Willa had finally cried herself to sleep with Buttons the elephant tucked under her arm, I sat at the kitchen table with Denton. The house was quiet. The Christmas tree lights blinked softly in the living room, mocking the holiday spirit that had been destroyed hours earlier. Denton poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from me. What are you thinking? I stared at my hands wrapped around the warm mug. I'm thinking about how stupid I've been. For 8 years, I've managed my parents' properties. I've handled every single problem, every tenant complaint, every repair, every tax filing. I've done it all without asking for anything in return because I thought if I just gave enough, they would finally accept Willa. Denton reached across the table and took my hand. It was never about giving enough, Corinne. You could have given them everything, and it wouldn't have mattered. This is who they are. I nodded slowly. I know that now. I finally see it. So what do you want to do? I looked up at him. I want to stop. I want to walk away from all of it. Let them figure out how to manage those properties without me. Let them see exactly how much I've been doing while they treated my daughter like garbage. Denton didn't hesitate. Then do it. I picked up my phone from the table and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Franklin Good. He was the property attorney who had helped my parents set up their rental business years ago. I had worked with him dozens of times, handling everything because my parents couldn't be bothered to learn the details. It was late, but I sent him a text anyway. I need to speak with you first thing tomorrow morning. It's urgent. He responded within minutes. Of course. Call me at 8. I barely slept that night. By 7:30 the next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, and every property file I had ever organized spread out in front of me. Lease agreements, tenant contact information, repair logs, tax documents, insurance policies. 8 years of meticulous work that had kept my parents' retirement income flowing smoothly. At exactly 8 o'clock, I called Franklin. "Corinne, what's going on?" he asked. "Your text sounded serious." "It is serious, Franklin. I'm officially stepping back from managing my parents' properties, effective immediately." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure about this? Your parents have no idea how any of this works. They don't even know where the lease files are. Your father called me once asking how to reset his email password. I'm not sure he even knows how many properties he owns." "I'm sure," I said. "All tenant communications, all repair coordination, all financial management. I'm done. If they have questions, they can contact you directly." Franklin sighed. "I'll do what I can, but Corinne, this is going to be a disaster for them. You've been running everything." "I know," I said. "That's exactly the point." After I hung up, I spent the next 2 hours organizing everything into boxes. Every file, every document, every piece of information my parents would need to manage their own properties. I labeled each box clearly so they couldn't claim I had left them without resources. Then I drove to their house while they were out visiting Margot. I walked up the porch steps and set the boxes down in front of the door. I placed a typed note on top. "You're on your own now, effective December 26th. I am no longer managing your properties. Good luck." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Lightness, freedom. The crushing weight of trying to earn my parents' approval was finally lifting from my shoulders. They wanted to treat my daughter like she was worthless? Fine. Let them see exactly how much I was worth when I was gone. I drove home with the windows down despite the cold, letting the winter air wash over me. For the first time since Willa was born, I wasn't trying to fix things. I wasn't trying to smooth things over. I wasn't trying to be the good daughter who kept the family together. I was just a mother protecting her child, and I was done playing nice. The unraveling began faster than I expected. December 26th, the day after Christmas, my phone started ringing at 7 in the morning. It was my father. I watched his name flash across the screen and let it go to voicemail. He called again and again and again. By noon, he had called 17 times. Each voicemail grew more frantic than the last. "Corinne, what is this? What do you mean you're stepping back? Call me immediately." "Corinne, this isn't funny. We need to talk about this. You can't just abandon your responsibilities." "Corinne, one of the tenants is calling about a broken heater. I don't know who to contact. Please call me back." My mother started texting around 2 in the afternoon. Her messages were exactly what I expected. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done to Willa, just demands. "Stop being so dramatic and come handle this tenant situation. Your father is losing his mind." "This is ridiculous, Corinne. You're acting like a child." "Call us immediately. We're your parents." I didn't respond to any of it. I turned off my phone and spent the day with Willa and Denton, watching movies and eating leftover Christmas cookies. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxious about what my parents needed from me. I was just present with my family. By December 27th, Things started falling apart. A pipe burst at one of the duplex properties. My father had no idea who the regular plumber was because I had always handled those calls. He panicked and found someone from an online listing who charged triple the normal rate. The guy showed up, made a temporary patch, and left without actually fixing the underlying problem. My father paid $800 for work that should have cost $200, and the pipe was still leaking. December 28th brought more chaos. Rent was due from 4 tenants. My father didn't know how to access the online payment system I had set up years ago. He didn't know the passwords. He didn't even know which bank account the money was supposed to go into. The tenants sent their payments, but the money sat in limbo because nobody knew how to process it. That same day, the property tax notices arrived in the mail. My father called Franklin Good in a panic, demanding to know what forms needed to be filed and when. Franklin walked him through the basics, but my father couldn't follow the instructions. He had never paid attention to any of it because I had always taken care of everything. December 29th was when my mother finally started to crack. 2 tenants called to complain about heating issues in their units. Without me to coordinate the repairs calmly and efficiently, my father tried to handle it himself. He lost his temper on the phone and threatened to evict both tenants if they kept bothering him. One of those tenants happened to be a paralegal. She immediately contacted a lawyer about harassment and potential violations of tenant rights. My mother called me 14 times that day. Her voicemails shifted from demanding to desperate. "Corinne, please, I don't know what you want from us, but this is getting out of hand. Just tell us what you want and we'll work it out." I didn't call back. December 30th was the breaking point. My mother tried to access the shared accounting spreadsheet I had maintained for years. She didn't know the password. She didn't know the email it was connected to. She called the bank and couldn't answer the security questions. The property insurance premium was due in 3 days, and she had no idea how much it was or where to send the payment. The property management company I had occasionally consulted for major repairs refused to work directly with my parents because all their contracts were in my name. Everything was collapsing. Everything I had built and maintained and organized over 8 years was crumbling because the people who benefited from my work had never bothered to learn how any of it functioned. New Year's Eve arrived cold and gray. Willa and I spent the afternoon making homemade pizza while Denton set up a movie marathon in the living room. We were planning a quiet celebration, just the 3 of us. No drama, no family, just peace. At 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the front of the house. Through the frosted glass, I could see 2 figures standing on the porch. My heart started pounding before I even opened the door. It was my parents. My mother looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was flat and unwashed. Her lipstick was crooked, applied with a shaking hand. My father stood slightly behind her, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Corinne," my mother said, her voice cracking, "please, we need your help. Everything is falling apart. We didn't realize how much you were doing for us." My father stepped forward. "We're sorry. We made a terrible mistake. Please come back. We'll do whatever you want." I stood in the doorway and let the cold air rush past me. I didn't invite them in. I didn't move aside. I just looked at them, these 2 people who had made my daughter feel worthless, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no joy in their suffering. Just a hollow clarity that this moment had been inevitable from the start. "You didn't make a mistake, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "You made a choice. You chose to humiliate a 7-year-old child in front of her entire family. You chose to tell her she didn't deserve love because of whose blood runs through her veins. That wasn't a mistake. That was cruelty." My mother's face twisted. "We didn't mean it like that. It was just about the money. We were trying to be fair to the other grandchildren." "Fair?" I almost laughed. "You gave 5 children $5,000 each and gave Willa a single dollar with a note telling her she wasn't good enough. That's not fairness. That's punishment, and she did nothing to deserve it." My father spoke up, his voice trembling. "Can we at least apologize to Willa? Please, Corinne, let us try to make this right." I stared at him for a long moment. Denton appeared behind me, his hand resting on my shoulder in silent support. I could feel his warmth steadying me, reminding me that I wasn't alone. I thought about Willa in the kitchen, happily spreading sauce on pizza dough, finally smiling again after days of quiet sadness. I thought about what it would mean to let these people back into her life. I thought about the risk of more hurt, more disappointment, more tears. But I also thought about what it would mean to deny her the chance to hear an apology, to see that adults can admit when they're wrong, to learn that forgiveness is possible even when it's hard. "She's in the living room," I finally said. "You have 5 minutes, and this apology better be real, because if you ever make her feel like an outsider again, you will never see either of us for the rest of your lives. Do you understand me?" My mother nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. My father whispered, "We understand." I stepped aside and let them in. My parents walked into the living room where Willa was sitting on the carpet, coloring a picture of a rainbow. She looked up when she heard footsteps and immediately froze. Her crayon stopped mid-stroke. Her eyes went wide with uncertainty, and she glanced at me for reassurance. I nodded gently, letting her know it was okay. My mother approached slowly, like she was afraid any sudden movement might shatter the moment. She lowered herself to her knees in front of Willa, her expensive dress pressing against the floor, her perfectly manicured hands trembling at her sides. "Willa," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I need to tell you something very important. What Grandma did on Christmas was wrong. It was mean and unfair and hurtful, and you didn't do anything to deserve it. Not one single thing." Willa stared at her, still clutching the yellow crayon in her small fist. My mother continued, "You are a wonderful little girl. You're kind and smart and creative, and I should have told you that every single day. Instead, I made you feel like you didn't belong. And I am so, so sorry." My father knelt down beside my mother. His eyes were red, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine regret on his face. "You're our granddaughter, Willa," he said softly. "You always have been. We forgot that, and we hurt you badly. That was our fault, not yours. Can you ever forgive us?" Willa looked at me again. I gave her a small smile, letting her know that whatever she decided was okay. This was her choice to make. She turned back to her grandparents and studied their faces for a long moment. Then she spoke in that honest, uncomplicated way that only children can. "Okay, I forgive you. But please don't be mean to me again. It made me really, really sad." My mother broke down crying. She pulled Willa into a hug, and my father wrapped his arms around both of them. I stood in the doorway watching this scene unfold, Denton's hand still warm on my shoulder. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired and cautiously hopeful that maybe, finally, things could be different. After Willa went to bed that night, I sat down with my parents at the kitchen table. Denton stood leaning against the counter, his arms crossed, making it clear he was there to support me. "If you want me to come back and manage the properties," I said, "there are going to be conditions." "Non-negotiable conditions." My mother nodded quickly. "Anything. Whatever you want." I held up one finger. "First, you will treat Willa exactly the same as your other grandchildren. No exceptions. No more comments about blood or belonging. If the other kids get gifts, Willa gets the same. If they get attention, she gets attention. She is your granddaughter, period." My father nodded. "Agreed." I held up a second finger. "Second, you're going to start paying me a management fee for my work. I've done this for 8 years without compensation. That ends now. You will pay me a fair rate, the same as you would pay any property manager." My mother hesitated, but my father spoke before she could object. "That's fair. We should have offered that years ago." I held up a third finger. "Third, and this is the most important one. If you ever make Willa feel like an outsider again, I walk away permanently. No second chances, no explanations. You will lose your daughter and your granddaughter forever. Do you understand?" The room was silent. My mother looked down at the table, her jaw tight. Then she nodded slowly. "We understand," she whispered. Over the months that followed, my parents made genuine efforts. It was awkward at first, forced. My mother clearly didn't know how to interact with Willa naturally because she had spent so many years keeping her at a distance. But slowly, things began to change. She invited Willa over to bake cookies. She took her to the zoo with the other grandchildren. She sent birthday cards that actually arrived on time, signed "With love from Grandma and Grandpa." Margot eventually called to apologize for staying silent on Christmas. She admitted she had always known about the favoritism but never spoke up because she benefited from it. I forgave her, but I also told her the truth. Silence in the face of cruelty is its own kind of betrayal. She cried and promised to do better. Time will tell if she means it. Nolan never apologized. He still hasn't. I've accepted that some people never change, and I've stopped expecting anything from him. The following Christmas, we gathered at my parents' house again. This time, when my mother handed out the envelopes, Willa received hers with the same ceremony as everyone else. She opened it and found a check for $5,000 and a handwritten note from my mother, for our granddaughter Willa, who deserves everything. Willa looked up with the biggest smile I had ever seen and ran to hug her grandmother. My mother held her tight, tears streaming down her face. I watched from across the room, my own eyes blurring with emotion, not because of the money never mattered, but because my daughter finally felt like she belonged. That night, as I tucked Willa into bed, she looked up at me and said, "Mommy, I think Grandma really loves me now." I brushed the curls from her forehead and kissed her cheek. "I think so too, sweetheart." She smiled and closed her eyes, Buttons the elephant tucked under her arm, completely at peace. I walked out of her room and stood in the hallway for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. For years, I believed that being a good daughter meant accepting whatever my parents gave me, even when it hurt. I thought loyalty meant silence. I thought love meant sacrifice without limits. I was wrong. Real loyalty means protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. Real love means standing up, even when standing up costs you everything. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't yell or fight or beg for acceptance. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop giving pieces of yourself to people who refuse to value them. Because when you finally do, they realize exactly how much you were worth all along. My daughter asked me what she did wrong that Christmas morning. The answer was nothing. She did absolutely nothing wrong. The only wrong thing would have been if I had let it continue. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If it touched your heart or made you think about the importance of protecting the ones you love, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and let me know what you would have done in Corinna's situation. Would you have walked away sooner? Would you have given your parents another chance? I read every single comment and I love hearing your thoughts. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new videos every week, and each one is designed to move you, inspire you, and remind you that you are never alone in your struggles. Thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next one.